I like to have it off, right? As sort of... Thanks. Yeah, why not? Yeah, let's cheer the idea of sex.
Russell Brand built his own brand on being a womaniser. Lewd jokes were at the centre of his act.
What I do is I make absolutely sure that it is a woman, then go for it.
Only this was no joke. Brand is now facing allegations of rape, sexual assault and controlling behaviour, dating back to the height of his fame. After a joint investigation by Channel 4 dispatches, The Times and The Sunday Times, the Met Police today confirmed a woman had contacted them, claiming Brand had sexually assaulted her in 2003. During that period, he was the presenter of Big Brother's Big Mouth. As one of his accusers, known only as Alice, took to the airwaves to claim at 16 she was collected from school to see Brand.
You believe a BBC car picked you up from school to take you somewhere to meet him?
It was back to his house. Because I'd used one of their cars previously, that he'd told me just to tell the driver where to take me.
As she criticised the presenter's denial of any wrongdoing.
I think it's insulting. And it's laughable that he would even imply that this is some kind of mainstream media conspiracy.
That war that you're funding between Ukraine and Russia and participating in is privately believed to be ultimately unwinnable. So why are top brass from the military lying under oath that there is a plan, that it can be won?
A combination of conspiracy theories and a mistrust of news have brought Russell Brand more than 6 million subscribers to his YouTube channel, having once been a household name offering up left-leaning politics. But in the past decade, Brand has largely disappeared from what he calls the mainstream media to become a voice of alt-right podcasts. It was online that Brand chose to strenuously deny the claims ahead of Saturday's dispatches.
Amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute. Is there another agenda at play? Particularly when we've seen coordinated media attacks before.
But they sort of allow you to behave in a certain way, don't they? I mean,
yes.
You are allowed, you're enabled to
Enabled
behave.
is a good word,
Yeah.
yes. I suppose if you're in a position of some success, people will let you be a nutter as long as they're making money out of it.
Yes.
In the past, Brand had joked that bosses had enabled his behaviour. Now there are serious questions for broadcasters on who knew what and when, as the BBC, Channel 4 and a Big Brother production company launched investigations. Today, his former agent reacted to the claims.
Are you surprised with the allegations?
Very surprised. And I can't make a comment about it for legal. You know that.
Did anyone approach you?
Sorry?
Did anyone come to you? Did anyone
No.
approach you?
I've never had any complaints about it.
As the cancellation of Russell Brand's commitments continue, today the promoters of his UK theatre tour said they were postponing remaining shows after his publisher Bluebird paused all future books with Brand. They said in light of the very serious allegations.
And if you've been affected by any of the issues raised in that report, you can find a range of places to seek help at channel4.com/support. Well, Dorothy Byrne spent more than 15 years as head of news and current affairs at Channel 4. She's currently president of Murray Edwards College, Cambridge. I spoke to her earlier and asked what she's made of what's unfolded since the investigation aired.
I think this is a very important investigation, and I'm very pleased that both Channel 4 and the BBC are now going to look into historical allegations that behaviour of an absolutely unconscionable nature was tolerated. This is definitely the Me Too moment for television, or one of them. I know that many journalists have tried to tell this story over several years, both newspaper journalists and I know the BBC has tried to do it, but they came across the problem that although some women were saying that they had suffered abuse, they said that they felt intimidated. They didn't say that they had been directly intimidated by Russell Brand, but that they felt intimidated and they didn't want to speak.
Now, he obviously denies the allegations, but to what extent do you think he and others have been enabled by the television industry?
I don't know what the circumstances are in the Russell Brand case. What I do know is that historically, terrible behaviour has been tolerated in television. I do think that things have become much better now, but that it's important that we look back and give voice to women who say that they were assaulted and that people working on the productions they were working on knew about it. I mean, that's terrible.
But I mean, the truth is about Russell Brand is that, you know, his sexual behaviour was not a secret. You know, he talked about it. It was part of his routine. It was part of his act. And it was part of what television executives were so excited to sign, wasn't it?
I don't think in the case of Russell Brand that most people knew that he was actually committing the sorts of acts which he has now been accused of. I think there was a failure to listen to what he actually said. And I have to say, as soon as in the current affairs department at Channel 4, we heard of these serious claims, Channel 4 began to investigate. I left Channel 4 several years ago, and it's only now that that investigation has come to fruition. And that tells you something about how difficult it is to tell these stories.
If you're right and this is a Me Too moment for television, then there are going to be other cases and other allegations that come forward. Now, in the Russell Brand allegations, it is being said that people within production were told, but we don't know precisely how high these were escalated. And it may be that the bosses were never told about this. I mean, there's something seriously wrong with the industry, isn't there, if that's the case?
We need to find out who was told and what they were told and why they did not refer those very serious allegations up. We need this to be investigated. It's the BBC and Channel 4 we're talking about. These are public service broadcasters, and the British public has the right to know.
Do you think internal investigations are good enough? Or do you think the BBC and Channel 4 will end up calling in outsiders, independent outsiders?
I would have thought that they will ultimately be pressurised into bringing outsiders in to investigate. These are very serious allegations, and an internal investigation does not feel like it would be enough.
When you say things have changed substantially since your early days in television, I mean, how sure are you that they have changed that much? I mean, the Russell Brand allegations are not that old.
I know for a fact that abuse still goes on because young women have told me about it, but I do not believe it's as prevalent as it used to be. And a key reason for that is the much greater number of women in senior positions, both in production companies and in broadcasters. And we will simply not put up with behaviour like that.
And just finally, what do you make of his rebuttal that this is the mainstream media ganging up against him because he's taken them on?
Well, that's just nonsense, isn't it? These accusations arose from young women, not from the mainstream media. This is a legitimate investigation.
Dorothy Byrne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, the Conservative MP Caroline Knox, who chairs the Women and Equalities Committee, is with me here in the studio. Dorothy Byrne was saying that she thought that the BBC and Channel 4 would end up being pressured from outside to bring in an independent investigation. Would you join those calls? Is the pressure coming from people like you?
Well, I think that's possible, but also look at what's happened today with the Metropolitan Police now investigating a complaint that has been made to them. I think that's absolutely imperative that the police investigation takes priority. So whilst I think that there are questions for both the BBC and Channel 4 to answer, I think that we really must see a police investigation. A decision on whether to press charges via the CPS is of paramount importance.
And that will inevitably take precedence over any
absolutely
commercial or independent investigations. But once that process begins, there's an awful lot to get to the bottom of here, isn't there?
Well, there is, and it's an abuse of power, influence and position, or these allegations indicate that that was what was happening, that women were afraid to come forward. Now, my select committee is doing an inquiry at the moment into the music industry, another part of the entertainment industry, where many people are reliant on short-term, insecure contracts, where they're freelancers and potentially vulnerable to exactly this sort of behaviour with nowhere to turn to complain. And I think that's something that really worries me, is that we're talking about people in positions of power and much younger individuals who may be reliant upon them for their future employment, for their job, their income, their rent, let's face it. And so I'm very concerned that the whole industry needs to have a light shone on it so that this sort of misogyny, harassment and abuse can't continue.
But these are industries, I mean, the entertainment industries all put sex symbols on pedestals. You know, it is good to be a sex symbol in music and television and acting and all those things. So, I mean, culturally, doesn't that just enable abusers?
Culturally, we have a massive problem, but there is an enormous difference between sex symbols and predators. And we need to be able to make sure that you can have the former, that people can...
Well, do you think you can? That's the point.
Yeah,
do you think it's possible to have a healthy, sexy, behaviour is good kind of thing that doesn't then lead to abuse?
Of course it's possible, and it's about individuals knowing the difference between yes and no, isn't it?
Yes, but I suppose my point is, if you have these industries that make people very powerful, if you become a star in the television industry, you've got a lot of clout and a lot of power.
And there are thousands and thousands of individuals in the entertainment industry who are massive sex symbols and have never abused that power, who have known where the line is drawn, who have never sought to exploit younger people in the industry, who have never been accused of sexual assault, of rape, of these abhorrent crimes.
But every time we've had one of these exposés, Savile or whatever it might be, the industries will say, well, things were very different back then. And then you go on a few years and then something else happens. So how convinced are you that things are very different now? I mean, we heard Dorothy there saying, well, it's still going on right now.
So Dorothy also said she feels that this is a Me Too moment for television. I sincerely hope she's right, but we've had them before for television. So look, what I think is imperative is that there's cultural change, that we look at the whole of society. We look at those men who are enabling it to happen, who are not speaking out. We look at what reporting mechanisms there are for employees, for people who find themselves in exactly this sort of situation, not knowing who to turn to, being afraid to report to the police, being terrified that they will be victim shamed and blamed. And television as a whole has an opportunity here. I hope it grasps it.
Do you think we need any kind of sort of, perhaps not statutory, but standard ways to whistleblow and to report bad behaviour? Because at the moment it's pretty dependent on where you work.
And that's what it very much looks like, that it's dependent on the employment practices where you're working, that it is dependent upon you having confidence in them. We'd look at organisations like the Metropolitan Police, wouldn't we, and think that whistleblowing strategies and practices there should be fairly robust, but we still had incidents like the Charing Cross Police Station, people like David Carrick employed there. So look, the reality is that we need to have systems that people can be confident in. There's no point in having the best whistleblowing policy in the world if people are too scared to use it.
Caroline Knox, thank you very much.